Can everybody hear me okay? Great, it's a little bit challenging with a mask on. I'd like to welcome you to our Future of the EMS and the Northshire presentation. I'd like to welcome those watching on Zoom, watching our live stream. Thank you, GNAT. We have our board members and other guests up here tonight that you'll meet in a little bit. But I'd also like to give a big welcome to our first responders and staff who will be here tonight. Thank you for coming. Tonight's meeting, which is our next slide up there. Our next slide. Our next slide, thank you very much. It's okay, we did not rehearse. Tonight we're going to briefly go over the background of Northshire Rescue Squad. We're going to talk about our staff, equipment and response times, our financials, our medical performance, our issues with the MRI findings and plans, Vermont EMS licensing and training, the path forward, and then question and answer sessions. And you see the handouts are available. If you didn't get one, you can get your own copy of that. This is a slideshow, and we will also have a link to this for those at home. We'll post that on our social media for anybody else who wants a copy, or email this to anybody else who would like a copy. I'm Susan Howard. I'm on the Board of Trustees. I currently serve as the president. And going into the Northshire Rescue Squad background. And then the next one, please. We're an independent nonprofit organization. We're in our 58th year of operation. We provide emergency medical services to 5 towns in the Northshire. Paramedic level service, 24/7, 365 days a year. We currently respond to over 1,200 calls a year. We're headquartered in the Manchester Municipal Complex, and the NRS has never been a municipal department in its history. The first ambulance was a 1964 Cadillac, donated by a Dorset resident. The backup ambulance was Brewster's Cadillac hearse. Previous headquarters was in the showroom of Leo Motors in 1964, then to Adams Park from 1965 to 1971, then behind the police station and firehouse on Depot Street from 1971 to 1995. We have had paramedic level service since August of 2000. Our mission is to provide prompt and professional EMS services to everyone in the communities we serve. Balance our capacity to serve communities with their needs, be financially prudent in our operations, with focus on sustainability, value, and long-range planning. Earn the reputation of being an organization people want to support, maintain good relationships with all of our partners, town governments, other public safety operations, police and fire, regional and state EMS organizations. The towns we serve are Manchester, Dorset, Danby, Mount Tabor, and Win Hall, routes 1130 until the 1130 split. The management of the Northshire Rescue Squad, Mike Casey is our Chief Operating Officer, who oversees daily operations, staffing and scheduling, medical equipment and supplies, vehicles, and we have a board of trustees that oversees financial, governance, fundraising, public and town relations, and the Municipal Emergency Services Board that consists of representatives from the 5 towns that we serve. And now I'd like to introduce Mike Casey, paramedic, COO, to talk about staff, equipment, and response times. Mike?
First of all, this is the list of all the staff members, minus one somehow got chopped off. One of our volunteers, Jenny Towsley, just got dropped off as a volunteer. Sorry about that, man. The reason I show you this, we have 10 full-time staff members, 9 per diem members, and 3 volunteers. When I first started with Northshire Rescue 33 years ago, we were staffing our ambulances with 3 volunteers, rotating on an 8-night rotation, and taking 1 12-hour shift on a weekend. Week time, day shifts were filled by tone-outs. As the need for services changed throughout the years, it became apparent that we needed to go to some kind of paid staff. Our first paid staff member was actually Jason Pearson, and our second paid staff member was Dale Long. We worked for a number of years with just 2 people working daytimes Monday through Friday. As the climate changed in the towns that we serve, where it became apparent that people couldn't get away during the day, it became apparent that we needed to go more with full-time staff. We went, and every year it seems like we have to add more full-time. We tried with limited full-time and per diem staff, but per diem means you work when you want to, you work when you can. It doesn't give them the structure that they need to be able to fulfill this coverage that we really needed. Excited. So right now, we are covering with 2 crews during the day. One crew is on from 6 a.m. to actually 6 a.m. the next morning. Our night crews right now actually are working 24-hour shifts. And then we augment them with the second crew, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. during the day. We're going to skip that slide. Inga's going to take care of that a little bit later. We are operating with 3 ambulances that are fully equipped for paramedic level services. Our oldest is 2015 Chevy, which has got, I believe, 125,000 miles on it. Our second one, the 2017, has 85,000 miles on it. And the 2021, which we received and put in service in July, already has 26,000 miles on it. Okay. So each ambulance is equipped with a striker power cot, a Zoll X-ray cardiac monitor that allows us to do 12 leads in the field and send them to whatever hospital we are transporting to. It allows the paramedic to pace a person's heart. It allows the paramedic to reset the person's heart. We carry medications for advanced life support. Zoll Auto Pulse is actually an automated CPR system that allows our 2-person crews to be able to continue doing ALS interventions by themselves. Intravenous pumps are for administering some medications that mostly for heart medications. Currently, we are in the process of switching them right at the moment. We have oxygen tanks on board, multiple oxygen tanks, with specialized equipment for various illnesses and injuries. In order for that cost, about 50 each ambulance is $100,000 if you were going to put them a new system together. A lot of this equipment just gets transferred from one ambulance to the other. So 2021, fiscal year 2021, these are the calls in each town. They total up about 1,234, like that. If you took the calendar year 2021, we actually responded to 1,417 calls. Okay. These are our response times. These don't include scheduled transfers, mutual aid calls that we did not respond to because the ambulance was out. Although it does include calls that were turned over to mutual aid and they did not get a response and responded back from the hospital to take a call. Some of the community service we do, CPR training, used to be every Monday night, first Monday of every month. Since COVID, what we've been doing, when somebody calls in for CPR class, we tell them to go online, do the didactic part online, and then we schedule a personalized one-on-one skills so that we don't have multiple people in the building at the same time. Ambulance covers the local events that we get paid to do. Burberry graduation, Burberry football games, the Vermont Summer Festival Horse Show. We provide them with 2 EMTs throughout the 6 weeks. The Maple Leaf Half Marathon, and the one that's not on there is, that I just thought of today, was the hill climb at Skyline Drive. And now I give you some South-Giver, our financial guru.
Yes, I'm the treasurer, so the real fun guy here that everybody enjoys. Okay, first, I want to just kind of give an overview of the budget of the squad. And the budget of the squad, as you see, we're in the ballpark of $1 million budget a year, which should kind of make it clear that, you know, providing high-quality paramedic level care to a territory of about 200 square miles is not inexpensive. It's also not easy. You know, to kind of put it in perspective, you know, $1 million budget, the town of Manchester's budget this year is about $6 million, the town of Dorset about $2.7 million. So it's a substantial operation to run. The biggest source of our revenues is medical revenues. Happily, this is again our budget, and we're running ahead of budget this year, which is a wonderful thing. But you'll see medical revenues at 540 on the budget, they fall very short of, you know, covering our costs as an operation. And, you know, you kind of have to understand a rescue squad in a more densely populated area with hospitals nearby might be able to operate with medical revenues covering most of their costs. But where we are, we're a long way from hospitals. The average transport call takes an ambulance out of service for over 2 hours. So we need to have extra capacity to cover the needs of our communities. And, you know, that, as the treasurer, when I came on board at first, I said, oh, maybe we could just do it one crew at a time during the day. Kind of learned over time that it isn't as efficient as we'd like, and a pure numbers guy would not admit that, but it's not as efficient as we'd like. But when you're the second person to call for an ambulance in the space of an hour, it makes a whole lot of sense. So we make up for the shortfall from medical revenues in 2 ways. The first is support from our community members. That's the donations and subscriptions you see up there. The second is support from our 5 service towns. As you'll see, that town support comes in 2 different pieces. Municipal ambulance support allows the squad to acquire a new ambulance when one needs to be retired. And that support is based upon each town's relative population. Municipal operations support is actually, it is based on the volume of calls within the town. So one based on population, the other based upon how much call volume in the town. Now that number looks pretty big, but it comes with sort of an invisible asterisk. We could put one in there. Looking over at our expenses, you'll see our second biggest expense is, you know, that $125,000 is actually rent, dispatch, and then some additional items for utilities and things like that. That $125,000 is what we pay the town of Manchester for rent, dispatch, utilities, maintenance. So the net cash amount, so while we're showing 195 over there, the net cash amount that we receive to support our operations for operations support is closer to 70,000. Now, our biggest expense by far, as it should be, is our people. Other big numbers, ambulance lease payment. There's a story that God won't get into the story. Ambulance lease payments, medical billings and collections, and medical equipment and supplies. Now, an item I left out, I should have thrown in there, my mistake, was insurance. Actually, insurance costs us about $55,000 a year at the squad. The biggest part of that is workers' comp insurance because our people have a tough job with an above average level of risk. So now, switching to the next. Right. And there we go.
Officers are currently trying to locate us.
Good. We're good? Yeah. Okay, so taking a closer look at one expense line that really was the focus of the consultants on medical billing. In the last slide you showed that it costs us about $60,000 a year. That's actually 11% of the amount collected by our Vermont-based billing company. It's important to note for a relatively small squad like ours, our billing company actually does a lot of work. It isn't just sending out bills. It's easy to kind of misunderstand. They actually make sure we stay in compliance with all the people who pay us. They have certified experts who know how to bill for each call in a way that's going to produce the highest collectible amount for that call. We all know that from medicine. They really chase after all the money owed to us, including setting up payment programs with customers. They also give us ideas on how to improve revenues. For instance, a few years back, when we did a non-transport, when we went to a call and didn't actually transport, but just we assisted, person didn't need to go to the hospital, and we left, that was a no-charge thing. So the billing folks actually pushed us in the direction of, it's not a big charge, but it actually makes a difference in our financials. They pushed us in that direction. They also, they pushed us to start accepting credit cards because we had better ways to be able to collect money from our accounts. Basically they're a very full service operation, knows us, has been with us for years, and they also know that they get paid more when they collect more for us. So we're always open as a squad, and that's kind of my job to look at alternatives, and we have looked at alternatives. But what we found today is, and we're still open to looking at alternatives. Some suggestions have been brought up, but the nature of this service is really important. It's not as if the squad does not exactly have a finance office that's overseeing all this stuff. Basically, what it has is me, a volunteer, trying to help Mike, our COO, to keep the finances of the squad on track. So moving back, yes, to the revenue side, annual fund. It's one of the places we like to think our communities tell us that they appreciate the service we provide. This is a primary job of the board. And a few years back, we had a real dip in our fundraising. And it was a real concern, and I've got to help. Actually, Susan gets a boatload of credit, along with Bob Niles, for getting that back on track, along with the rest of the board. This year, we're ahead of the budget. Budget is 95, we're already at 99, and our year goes through June 30th. So we're in pretty good shape. We're also ahead in total fundraising for the year. Next one, the subscription. The subscription program, I hope a lot of you guys are subscribers. One key thing, insurance is in, I have to point out a little disclaimer, insurance is in quotes because we cannot call it insurance because we're not licensed to sell insurance. But for $110 a year, a household can know that if they need to call us, they will not receive a bill. We'll collect what we can from insurers wherever possible, but we'll never bill our subscribers for out-of-pocket costs. And we haven't hit our budget for subscriptions yet this year, so you can subscribe online. Okay. Municipal. This is, on the municipal, our relationship, before 2017, this, we created this sort of municipal, services board in 2017. Before that, every year, the squad went to each town individually and requested an amount of support for that year. In 2017, the thought was to put in place something that's more formal, the new municipal board. And, at that time, we actually changed the name of the squad to Manchester Rescue Squad to Northshire Rescue Squad. But the real idea was to improve transparency, improve communications between the squad and its towns. Representatives of the new unit board all came together with the squad. We agreed to the approach I talked about before, 2 different pieces based on population and based on call volume to support the squad. Everybody came together, signed an agreement, and agreed it was a fair way to help support the squad. It also provided, total transparency that every town knew what every other town was providing. So on the squad side, we agreed to keep the community board members updated on important news about the squad and about our financial situation. And since 2017, the squad has been regularly communicating this information to the representatives from each town. But the community board was also set up to be able to give the towns the opportunity to give us their input. There are 5 representatives from the 5 towns, but there are 9 votes split by the size of the town. Manchester has 4 votes, Dorset has 2, Danby, Mountain, Tabor, and Winhall each have 1. Now that board wasn't set up to oversee the operations of the squad. That's still the same old board you see up here. But the board was set up to be a loud voice if the towns wanted to send a message to the squad, a voice that the squad and the board would listen to. Now, unfortunately, as it says up here, has this board worked well? The answer is not as well as we'd hoped. We continue to communicate to town reps, and we ask them to join us for meetings, but we haven't had all the meetings we want. First, we have the pandemic, didn't help a lot. But most of the town reps, essentially told us their towns were happy the way things were going, and they didn't really feel the need to meet. Actually, no one ever requested a meeting. And, I took that personally. But through that, we've become aware, also that the squad's communications, we used representatives who were put on it by the towns, and they, all in good faith, but often those communications never made it to the select board. So we feel that, honestly, this whole idea of community board, a lot of people, really had great hopes and thought this was a great idea in the beginning. I think most of us actually continue to think that it was a great idea, and all it needs to do is be tweaked to work better. One change that we're thinking about suggesting is that we have select board members as representatives on the community board. Maybe we have more than 1 rep from each town. We think that, it really can be improved upon and is one of the best vehicles for all of our 5 towns to feel, ownership and involvement in the squad. Okay, so essentially to cover real quick, this is the agreement that created that board was the contract that we signed back in 2017 between the 5 towns and the rescue squad. We signed it in 2017 and it expired in 2020. We reached out a few times to try to get a new agreement in place. One of the other things we might want to change is the contract was designed that really all 5 towns had to take part. It really didn't make sense to sign the agreement. 4 towns told us they were comfortable moving forward. Manchester wasn't comfortable with moving forward with the agreement. So I think, we want to deal with that, but we also clearly want to deal with getting Manchester to the point where they feel it makes a lot of sense. Also, since that's fine. Since the old agreement was going to expire in 2023, it's basically, we're 18 months through a 3-year agreement. And we think it makes a lot of sense for us to work with the towns and not just do an agreement for the next 18 months, but take it out for an extra couple of years. Okay, this unity support from the town of Manchester, because that's really kind of a focus right now. We decided to kind of show you the way we tend to look at this, or I do as treasurer. This is the gross amount is the amount of the total operational ambulance support that we requested and generally got agreed from towns. That's with the town of Manchester. The NRS rent and dispatch, that's just the rent and dispatch part that we pay the town of Manchester. There's another 15,000 we pay them for other things, but that leads to sort of the net amount that the town of Manchester pays us, essentially the cash that they pay us. So if you look at this, we've had 2 years where we had pretty big bumps, and as treasurer, I can say we never wanted to have bumps like that. The first one was, I mentioned earlier, fundraising fell off a cliff one year. That was that fiscal 2019 number. Fell off a cliff, we were facing a big loss. We asked the towns to help support us. The second one was in fiscal 21, when we started losing people. And we started, we recognized, it was really Mike who recognized that, compensation really was an issue. And so we researched around the area, found out what reasonable compensation was. We had to make a shift. If you go back, compensation is 70% of our budget. You make a decent shift in the amount of compensation, and we were kind of in a hole again that year. So we asked the towns to support. But we really have an intent to keep our finances under control. And if you look at the last 2 years of increases here, we requested 2.5% and a 3.9% increase. We try to keep things in check. So that's my section. So now, Dr. Robert Schwartz, Bob Schwartz, to speak about the medical side.
My name is Bob Schwartz, and I'm a family doctor here in town in Northshire. I've also been involved in the rescue squad really for the 30 years that I've been here. In the beginning, that involvement was really close to the squad members. We actually went on calls with the squad and rode with the ambulance. And over the years, under some great leadership under Mike and with the teamwork of other squad members, they've been able to build a squad that really is highly professional, well-educated, delivers really spectacular medical care for a town that's this size. The fact that we have paramedics available on the vast majority of calls is not necessarily common in all small towns, but it makes an enormous difference in quality of care. Paramedics have training that is initial training and then ongoing training that makes them actually more qualified than most physicians to provide the kind of emergency care that you need when you call an ambulance. I don't think many people realize that, but we have something really special here. This is a great group of people and very highly trained. So, how do we keep track of the quality of medical care? Really, in any medical organization, there's a level of involvement that's routine. In other words, routine review of records. And Mike reviews every run sheet personally for any sort of quality problems that might occur. In addition, there's a more informal way to review this information. And sometimes we'll get comments from community members, emergency room doctors, or other people that are involved in call, even people that were the patients who were picked up with concerns about the quality of the medical care delivered. All of those get reviewed by the district medical director, Dan Perrigo. And I spoke with Dan last week and just confirmed that he has never had any significant medical problems arise from those reviews. There are always minor issues that come up that warrant conversation, and those conversations take place between Dan or Mike and the crew member involved. But that's routine, and that should be the case. That's how we learn, get better, and maintain a high quality of care. So in summary, the quality of care we get from the rescue squad is extraordinary. Very highly trained individuals that are really committed to the job. And then that's backed up by people looking at their performance from a medical standpoint and ensuring that the quality continues to be high. Thank you.
My name is Ben Weiss. Thanks for coming out tonight. I'll do my best to talk through the mask. On January 11th, a consultant who was hired by the Manchester Select Board came in and gave a presentation. The consultant is MRI, and we had very little notice of this. So a couple of our board members were on the Zoom call, but to say the least, they were pretty much blindsided by the presentation. First off, this is the same consultant that was hired by Manchester and Dorset in 2015 to perform a report on consolidation of police, fire, and rescue in the Northshire. One of the things they concluded, obviously, was that rescue was already consolidated. But they looked at police and fire as well. The current study was very different. The current study was EMS only and was EMS only in the town of Manchester. And I think that's potentially one of the problems with this study, is that it focused only on Manchester. And as you've heard, we serve 5 towns in the Northshire. So we want this opportunity to be able to give our side of the consultant's findings. Finding number 1 was that no action was taken by NRS board members to implement the MRI plan from 2015. I can say for a fact that's absolutely not true. I joined the Dorset Fire District Board specifically to try to get East Dorset and Dorset Fire Departments consolidated, which was one of the first action items in the MRI report. I know that Jim Salzgiver as well took significant action on that. And in fact, he was interviewed recently, I was not, and he did inform the consultant of that. And I don't know, somehow that got skipped in the consultant's report. Finding number 2, that the NRS response times are excessive, considering the staff unit is based in Manchester. I think that's an important part of that finding. Again, the consultants seem to ignore that this squad serves 5 towns. And the standard that this consultant compared response times to is actually an urban standard, not a rural standard. Furthermore, NRS has a policy of not using lights and sirens if it's not a critical call. And that's done with public safety in mind. If they use lights and sirens on every call, we'd be focused on metrics and not on safety. The next finding is that the Manchester public safety officials indicated regular complaints and concerns about MRS. It's my understanding that MRS hasn't received any of these complaints. And as you can imagine, it's really hard to fix problems if you don't know that problems exist. So, furthermore, we get tons of positive feedback. Mike Olafano's done a great job with our website, and he's posted lots of favorable quotes on our website. Please take a look. The next finding is the internal culture of NRS is not focused on the town of Manchester. You can kind of see a consistent theme here. We do not prioritize calls from one town over another. And this whole internal culture thing, the consultant talked to Mike Casey and interviewed no one else on the staff, and then came to a determination of the culture of the rescue squad. I'm not sure how that's possible. The next finding is that Manchester pays 70% of the municipal support, but only represents 50% of the population. That is true. As Jim went over the municipal services contract, there are two portions of that contract. One is specifically based on call volume, and the second is based on population, which is the ambulance component. And this was a contract negotiated with the town of Manchester. Manchester's net support of our budget, I think, is an important figure to know. It's 6% of our budget. And 25% of our budget, as Jim said, comes from fundraising. So all of the towns that we serve get a great deal on EMS. The next finding is, despite being the largest stakeholder, Manchester has little effect to change, to perform change at the NRS. I don't believe this is true. The way that the Municipal Services Board is set up, Manchester has 4 votes on that board. Dorset has 2. Danby, Mount Tabor, and Wayne Hall each have 1. So they have considerably more say on that board than any other town does. I don't need oxygen. Let's see. Next finding: Manchester's EMS costs are rising too fast at a rate of annually 14%, is what it says in the consultant's report. This is not true. I mean, Jim just went over the numbers. The 5-year average is 9.8%. This year's fiscal increase will be 2.5%, and next fiscal year will be 3.9%. And I think Jim gave the rationale for some of the high increases in the past. Let's see, NRS revenue stream is not optimized, and NRS pays too much for medical billing. Jim did a recent study as a treasurer. He's a great numbers guy, as you heard. And he found out that compared to other squads of our size in the state of Vermont, our medical billing rates are quite comparable. And Jim went into medical billing, and I think he absolutely nailed it. She does a lot more than send out bills. Her collection rate is somewhere around 92%. So it's really, you can focus on what her fee is, or you can focus on what she generates in revenue for the squad. And the latter, I believe, is more important. So at the same meeting, the consultant for the select board presented 3 options for Manchester's future emergency medical services. Option number 1, I don't know if I'm corresponding with these slides at all, Anyway, number one is status quo. Continuing to receive services from the rescue squad. But they did acknowledge that Manchester's contract with NRS has expired, and the consultant did say that if they go this route, they should sign a contract, which we agree with totally. Option number two is to create a town EMS department. This would be a taxpayer-funded EMS department. And there's also an option 2+, which introduces a private partner and a public-private partnership deal. The third option was to contract with a for-profit private ambulance service. The consultant did conclude that this is not a viable option due to the population of the Northshire. So obviously, we hope very much that the town goes with option number one, but I'd like to just very briefly outline option two and option 2+, as I understand it. Option two, the consultant considered the costliest of the options. Obviously, the town would have to purchase ambulances, equipment, medications. We believe that the consultant may have even underestimated the costs and the availability of this equipment. They stated that there's a 2-year wait for new ambulances. I'm not sure if that was pre-pandemic or not. What we do know is that the plan alone, the plan that a consultant would write to create this new service was estimated to be $92,500. To put that into perspective, that is a year and a quarter's worth of what Manchester pays net to the rescue squad for emergency services. A year and a quarter to do a plan. Another thing we know is that moving from a nonprofit model, which we are, to a taxpayer-funded model, obviously the town would lose somewhere in the order of $225,000 right off the bat in donations. So it'd be a tough hole to climb out of. Option two also calls for $500,000 worth of ARPA funding. ARPA is the federal COVID stimulus money that every town in Vermont has been allocated. On the surface, it sounds great, great, free money, federal money. But keep in mind that ARPA money can be used for lots of other purposes, other projects in Manchester, roads, bridges, et cetera, et cetera. Also, there's a significant effort involved in setting up a new ambulance service. Obviously, the town would have to have a department head, paramedics. This is all during the EMS staffing crisis. Another budget would have to be created, reviewed, approved. The town would need to develop HIPAA standards. And also more town employees needs more liability, more insurance, more benefit coverage. And then a really big one is, what does this mean? What does all this uncertainty mean for all of the surrounding towns? Keep in mind, we serve 4 other towns, and the uncertainty is here in Manchester, but also in the surrounding areas. Option 2+ is very similar to option 2, but it also includes an undisclosed private partner. We feel that option 2+, after looking at it, has most of the problems of option 2. Startup costs and staffing, ARPA money that could be used in other spots, but also throws in a new one, which is added risk to the town of Manchester if the private partner is not sustainable in the long term. I mean, the town will be here, and so that's a real concern. So anyway, I don't want to take up too much time, but I do have a few questions that the NRS has about the town plan that we would like answered, but I think even more importantly, the people of the Northshire should really ask these questions and hopefully get answers to. So number one, are the plans for the EMS department for Manchester even feasible? Was the consultant aware of licensing issues involved, which Inga will talk about next? The consultant's plan did say that if they hustle, they could have things set up by July. I think I put it in the slides, July 2023. That's July of this year. I would say another question to ask is, does the town manager have the desire to oversee an emergency medical services department? And does he have the bandwidth to set up and oversee that department? This whole thing's been a lot of work, so every once in a while you get to have a little bit of fun. This is what I consider fun. This is a quote from the study. The consultant said, if you're going to make a change in EMS delivery system, now is the time. Are you kidding me? Anyway, I don't mean to insult your consultant. I just thought that was really funny. Question number two. Will new EMS department be paramedic level or basic life support level? I think this is maybe the most important question in all of these. We feel strongly that it needs to be paramedic level. We're 25 minutes away from a hospital. Paramedic level crews can administer life-saving drugs, cardiac drugs, and I can't talk about this, but these guys can. Is crucial. We're so far away. If a hospital is right down the road, it'd be a different story, but it's not. Next question. How many ambulances would this town department have? And what condition would these units be in? We've heard from their consultant that it would be 2 years to get a new ambulance and that they would start by using used ambulances. One of our 3 ambulances in the squad is currently owned by the town of Manchester. It is our oldest. It has 125,000 miles on it. So we assume that would be one of theirs. But to let everybody know, at least in NRS, when an ambulance is sold, that means that ambulance we've given up on. It has so much downtime in the shop, and it costs a lot of money to repair. And that's when it's more economically feasible to buy a new unit. So I would ask the question of, are the ambulances that you start your squad with going to be reliable? You might want to get an extra one because you probably be in the shop a lot. Next question is, who is the undisclosed private partner in the 2+ plan? How does the private partner benefit from this deal? Are there any potential conflicts of interest here? Another important question is, what is the long-term sustainability of the private partner? The town's going to be here. If the private partner isn't, and the private partner is supplying some funding to make this make sense, and you really got to be sure that the private partner will always be there. So these are tough things. I mean, this is the stuff that really should be considered. Are there other potential uses for this ARPA money in town? I would say obviously there are. Will the town, this is another service-related question, will the town continue with 2 ambulance crews in the long term? The consultant's findings said that they would start with 2 crews, and then after 1 year, they would reevaluate and potentially go down to a single crew if they couldn't justify 2 crews. Question number 7. What does the plan mean for citizens outside of Manchester like myself? The consultant's plan suggests that the town of Manchester should provide rescue services to the rest of the Northshire. Doesn't talk about initial costs, doesn't talk about cost over time. With this study being very Manchester-centric, what does that mean for the level of service in all the surrounding towns? And will the new town department compete with the Northshire Rescue Service for the service of those tanks. So, final question. Sorry to take all this time. What does this plan mean for the subscription plan? We think that, well, we know from the feedback we get, the citizens of Northshire really like the subscription plan. It saves them money. It's also a nice revenue source for the squad. And it's also a way for subscribers to feel more connected with the squad. It's a grassroots fundraising effort. So anyway, I'll leave you with three thoughts. The rescue squad's still going to be here. That's thought number one. We're not going anywhere. Thought number two, we firmly believe our services cannot be equaled by a town department. And we firmly believe that our cost savings cannot be equaled by a town department. And number three, we wish to continue serving the people of Manchester.
Come back to follow. I feel like we should come up here and start telling jokes or something so you can a little bit. All right, my name is Ava Luce. I am a paramedic with Northshire Rescue Squad. I am just entering my 30th year in EMS. I started when I was 2. I moved here in 2000 specifically to work full-time for then Manchester Rescue. And I absolutely fell in love with the community and the people. And despite the winters, I have not been able to drive myself away. So you're still stuck with me at this point. I just want to talk to you a little bit about licensing and training for our EMS providers. One of the big concerns that we have with the study is the fact that it would be very difficult to put a new ambulance service in play by June or July this year. On average, in our experience on the board of directors for the district, it does take on average about a year to get all of the paperwork together, to get the licensing application in, to demonstrate all the criteria that you have to meet in order to become licensed in the state, and then to have the approval of the district board. And certainly, there's obviously political things, but overall, the district board lends its approval if it feels like this would be a beneficial move for the communities that it serves, which are all of the communities that are overseen by the medical director at Southwestern Vermont Medical Center. So it includes DNB, even though most of our DNB patients go to Rutland. We're all covered by SMC. So there's an application process. This is all in statute. I won't bore you with it, but there are pages of EMS rules about this. The applications go to the Department of Health. They also go to our district board for review. Then they have to be posted publicly for comments. Comments then go to the Department of Health. They review them and then share that information with the applicant as well as the district board. Then once the comment period has closed, the person can present their application to the district board, at which time the board members can go back to their individual agencies. And we have 14 agencies that sit on our board. And they have a comment and question period as well. We meet as a board every other month. We're not obstructionists, so we could meet more often if we had to, but still, this is not a quick process. It's not like applying for a credit card. There's a lot of other things, criteria that you have to meet in terms of you have to demonstrate you have all the equipment already before you even apply. So for someone to apply for a license, you actually already have to own the ambulances. You have to have the staffing, you have to have the equipment, you have to have insurance. There's a lot that goes into licensing. So I'm certainly not standing here to say that it's not possible. It's just, it's unlikely that we could get that process in place within such a short time. Probably more concerning is that there's already a shortage of EMS personnel in Vermont. Every single full-time department in the state right now has openings, right? So if you call 911, your expectation is that the ambulance is going to arrive quickly and well staffed. And in some places, there are, ambulance services that don't have enough staff to cover their schedules. And then you add COVID into the mix, and people are sick, and families are sick, and people are quarantining. And right now, it's really difficult to staff ambulances statewide. I'm not specifically talking about Manchester, but just statewide. So the 23 members that Mike talked about earlier together have over 20,000 hours of initial licensing education. So how long would it take us? How long would it take us to retrain people for a new agency? In addition, those 23 members do over 500 hours every single year of continuing education because medicine changes quickly. And so we know that they need to keep up their skills and they need to work together as a team and they need to look at the evidence and the way things are changing. That's a really hard shoe to fill. And so in addition, a new agency would have to demonstrate that they have the capacity for training and maintaining that need. Right now, I'll put a little shameless plug into anybody who might be interested in EMS. We have a new level of certification within the state called the Vermont EMS First Responder. This is a 24-hour class that would cost about $25, and we could probably find that in my, glove compartment for you. But we teach you CPR, basic first aid, life-saving interventions like defibrillation, putting a tourniquet on somebody who's bleeding, Narcan up your nose if you're not breathing, EpiPen in your leg if you're dying from anaphylaxis, if you ate a bee or something, and assisting with an inhaler. So none of this is like rocket science. This is probably things that you already do inside your home whenever your family members trip and fall over the dog or whatever. So that is the entry level to join an ambulance right now. And we would certainly love people from our community to get more involved. That's a certification from the state, and it makes you eligible to be trained by an agency to drive the ambulance or to ride the third person in the back. Certainly, we wouldn't be like, oh, you know CPR, like, here's this guy having a heart attack, you're good. Go in the back, you're fine. So we have then other certification and licensing levels. Our first responder, which is the emergency medical responder, is an additional 60 hours of education. These also are people who can't be alone in the back, but oftentimes these are like our firefighters and our police officers and people who are already out in the community in some sort of public service capacity. And they really want to just know more so that if they go to a scene or they go to a call, they can do a better job taking care of the patient. The entry level to be in the back with the patient is an EMT. That's a nationally registered certification where you have to take a psychomotor exam and a written exam at the end of a 150-hour class that also has ED time and ride time with the ambulance. Those EMTs learn kind of advanced first aid, advanced life support skills from kind of like a CPR, AED perspective. And they can use almost all of the equipment on the ambulance as well as give a bunch of medications. The advanced EMT is the fun one, so if you want to stick people with needles, this is the role you want to be in. These guys start IVs, they can give fluids, they can push medications. They also learn advanced airway management techniques, but more importantly, they start to learn a lot more about the pathophysiology of disease, and they start to understand why you're experiencing what you're experiencing and how we should treat that based on what we have in the trial. So that's about another 180 hours of education. And then you have your paramedics. You guys want to stand, wave, anything? These guys go through not an education course put on by the state. They go through either college or trade school, roughly the equivalent of 30 to 40 credit hours, between 1,000 and 1,500 hours of training. And they focus on pharmacology, advanced pathophysiology of disease, assessment, airway management, and a lot of other kind of interventions that would be super fun to talk about over coffee sometime. So these guys are amazing, and I echo Bob Schwartz a lot in that there's a big difference in the level of care that you get when you get a paramedic. And it's not the disco passion, it's not the title, it's that 1,500 hours of understanding why what is happening to you is happening to you and how to fix it. And that's huge. It's the difference between having a doctor take care of you when you're sick and having your mother give you chicken noodles. Right, so, this is what I have. If anybody has questions or is interested, I would love to talk to you. Training is my passion and I absolutely love Northshire Rescue, so the more the merrier. Thank you.
Well, my name is Bob Niles, and I'm from Dorset, and I'm on the board of trustees for the rescue squad. And I have some good news. I'm the final speaker in the speaking portion. So just bear with us a bit longer here. And my mission out here is just, okay, let's figure out, you've got a lot of information you've heard tonight in these presentations. And now the question I'm sure you're asking is, what happens next? Where do we go from here? So I just want to talk just briefly about the path forward for the rescue squad. So you're going to take a journey there, and you got to think about where are we going? What's the issue we're trying to address as we move forward? And I think it's important to say, especially after what you've just heard tonight, the issue is not the quality of the medical care that's provided by these people that are here tonight. That's not the issue. And I found it kind of interesting when that tone went off. Few people got out of their seats, walked out of here promptly. That told me all I needed to know about the quality of care we get and the importance of the work that they do. So let's put that aside. That's not the concern, okay? What the concern seems to be, or what the failure is, perhaps on all sides, is a failure to communicate. So in putting this path forward, it's a real emphasis on communication. So I'm going to talk about 4 areas. We've covered some of this already, but we'll just kind of scope it one more time. The first thing in communication I want to address is municipal governance. As you heard from Jim, we have a structure in place. It's called the Emergency Medical Service Board. Let's make it work. Let's make it work. As you know, there's a voting structure with Manchester has 4 votes, Dorset has 2, 1 each from Danby. The towns are Mount Tabor and Winhall. That's, if you're Manchester, you got 4 votes, you get 1 other person, you can pretty much do what you want to do. And that board, as Jim pointed out, really hasn't been functioning the last few years. And maybe one of the reasons they weren't functioning, I think, as Jim did mention, is because the healthcare was being done, there wasn't really the reason to meet. We have to forget that. We have to meet and communicate with each other. One idea that once again, Jim mentioned was, we could talk about is maybe there should be one elected official, a select board member from each town that's on that municipal board. That way, maybe the information flows better. They're responsible to voters. They should meet at least twice a year. As Jim said, they haven't been really formally since she started. Yes, there's been communication by email, but let's get together and physically meet. And if it's during the pandemic, let's talk on Zoom, but let's physically meet. If twice a year isn't enough, we can always do it quarterly or more than that. Let's start somewhere. And it would really help if all 5 towns would commit now by signing the EMS agreement to kind of keep this board up and running through June of 2025. That'll be here before we know it. So we have work to do on communication. Let's start working on it now. By then, we hope we'll then want to continue into the future. So that's it for governance. The next issue is, I want to talk about briefly, is urgency. And I can see why Ben had problems with the math. There's all kinds of conversations you can have about it. How what is urgency? We actually have access to data that lets us track, what's going on. How long does it take from that tone in the garage to get out the door? How long does it take from the tone to get on scene? We have that information, and it's something we should do, and track it not once a year, but maybe track it more frequently. And I think one of the things we can do with the rescue squad is look at patterns over time, so we can, when the data comes in, we can say that's good, that's bad. Let's maybe, our board could do that every month. We currently talked about calls going up, how many calls. We can include metrics on response times in our monthly meetings. We could then share those results, in town. Maybe not every month, but every quarter we can publish on our websites and the towns, here's the response times, what do you think, what's going on? So there's ways to let people know what we're doing and how well we're doing our job. The next thing is collaboration. If that board is a functioning 5-town unit, that's a great opportunity to have a group of people together to talk about long-term issues you may have outside of the day-to-day operation of the rescue squad. So it's one more thing to put on the agenda. It's an opportunity to communicate, not on daily issues, but on other things you may have in our minds. Are there other services that we should be adding? If so, how do we do it? And how do we pay for it? And how do we plan for it? We should also look at ways to collaborate, not just at the management level or the municipal leadership level, but also from our squad to the police departments, to the fire departments in Manchester and in Dorset. I mean, there could be one simple step you could take to restructure where maybe one of our squad members is assigned, okay, this is the person who is our in-house expert in communication link to Manchester Police. This person is the link to Manchester Fire. The third person would be the link to Dorset Fire. That gets that at the operational level, it gets people talking together. They can participate in staff meetings. They can hear what's coming up. Think about what's the angle that might affect the rescue squad. Have those discussions at the operational level. Bubble it up to the top. There's another way to get communication going, and that's a good thing. And we can work with each town to customize, how that link would actually be done. And finally, once again, it's just kind of a wrap up on communication. That commitment to the Emergency Service Board is a great first step. We can start that tomorrow. And I think that, I know the trustees have been talking the last few weeks about maybe we should spend more time attending select board meetings. We can do that. And while we're there, we can talk about, call volume, response times. You can talk about financial status. There's things, if there's upcoming events, you can hear about it, talk about it with the select board, at those meetings. So it's just sitting there waiting for us to do. So really, in conclusion, you wrap this all up. Okay, this is very simple. We'd like to get all 5 towns on board to sign a 3-year agreement. That takes us through June of 2025. In all 5 towns, it's just not signing a piece of paper. You've really got to be committed to making this work on the communication front. And on communication isn't just speaking to each other, it's listening to each other. So if we commit to communicate and we commit to each other for the next few years, we can solve this issue with the rescue squad. That's it. Thank you.
For being so patient, I know it was a very long hour. We appreciate it. We know we have some questions from people in the audience, but we do have a very somewhat large patient audience tuned in via Zoom. And I'm going to leave it to our young high-tech and our slightly older high-tech individual to figure out how we take questions in an orderly way from, looks like a few folks on Zoom. So.
Everybody good? Thumbs up, maybe? On your screen? All right, awesome. So if you have a question, could you please raise your hand in the Zoom, in your window or using the Zoom feature? We can see you all. Any questions? Feel free to raise your hand.
Anybody writing in the comments, I think, maybe? Can everybody hear you?
Maybe.
Okay, well, maybe while they're figuring out that check, oops, here we go. Hello? Well,
Hi,
that's good.
everybody.
We can hear you, go ahead.
Okay, hey, hi, everybody. This is Dan Wolfson. I'm just checking in from the State of Vermont EMS office. I'm your state EMS medical director. I'm an emergency physician at University of Vermont and work for the EMS office. I just wanted to quickly check in and let you know that this issue came to my attention. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of feedback from what I know from the EMS office side of things. I can tell you that from my point of view, Northshire Rescue has a solid, positive reputation. I've been doing this for 10 years and I have never had any complaints or issues or things that I had to investigate regarding Northshire Rescue. As far as performance metrics, for example, we track the American Heart Association Mission Lifeline, which monitors how well EMS agencies respond to people with chest pain. And there's a performance metric that looks at, does an EMS agency obtain an electrocardiogram or ECG? That's where they put all the wires on your chest and get the tracing of your cardiac activity. Does an EMS agency obtain an EKG for any patient with the chief complaint of chest pain who is over 35 years of age? And I can tell you that we've been tracking this for many years. And this, on an average statewide, agencies range from 50% of the time to 100% of the time. And I pulled out my data for 2020, and Northshire Rescue collected the EKG 100% of the time in every quarter of 2020. So that's excellent, top of the line, and I think speaks well of their performance as an agency. I'd also just add that having a nonprofit EMS agency that is on a town budget and works for multiple different towns servicing the wider community is a pretty common model throughout Vermont EMS. And finally, just thank you for hearing me out. I just wanted to add some objective facts that I know. And the Vermont EMS office and people I work with would be more than happy to come down and meet with you, answer questions, provide information, anything we can do to be helpful. So that's it. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Dan, for joining us tonight. We have our next legal alternate, and I'm someone from the audience. I believe there's a microphone right down there in front of the stage. If anybody has any questions or comment, we're going to have to come up to the, have to come up to the front so we can hear you and the folks at home can hear you. And it's kind of dark, the microphone's right here. Thank you for coming up. See it right down there? There we go. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sally Smith. I'm a resident of Manchester. And as a resident, does it suggest the fact that Manchester, the town, does not sign a contract that they're not in favor of the rescue squad?
I think you need to ask the town of Manchester.
Yeah, so we're not going to speak for them.
Actually,
but Jim.
I think, we just want to make one comment. We invited the Manchester Select Board members and town manager here. And we really appreciate the fact that we have them here. They raised with us in advance that they said, they were interested in coming, and we really appreciate that. At the same time, they pointed out that due to the fact, we have public meeting laws, I'm on a bunch of boards that deal with that. You've got to be careful when you're together in a group. You can't, without it being a warned meeting, discuss things. So I kind of say that's the right question to ask the town of Manchester, but I don't think the town of Manchester is in a position to address that tonight. So, and I just didn't want to make it sound like they weren't willing, because they're showing great good faith being here with us, and we appreciate that. So, but we can't really speak for them.
I guess we got to do that research on our own.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And now, is there other folks from the, no other comments or questions?
No, we don't have anyone online.
Okay, don't have, they're all gone, or is there any questions?
Oh, no, they're all there. They just don't want to talk.
Don't leave. Any other comments or questions from the audience?
We do have one that just popped in on Zoom.
Oh, okay. Is it my mother? No.
I'm gonna get them up right now.
Thank you. Gotta be good, she's gonna watch this tomorrow. Okay, thanks for your patience.
Oh, well, Mason just left, so we're gonna move on. Sorry
Okay,
about
great. Any other questions or comments from the audience?
I just like to take a moment.
Can you come on down to once again, the mic, so the folks at home can hear you, and it is live streaming as well and recorded. Thank you.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm Knox Thompson, and I had a situation, a journey in April of 2018, and I gotta say, I have a lot of gratitude for the Salvation School.
Speak to the microphone.
So instrumental in saving my life. I was sicker than I thought I was, which usually is the case, I guess, you'd be in the ambulance, otherwise you'd be in the hospital. But so I was in the hospital for a weekend. I came home the next day, I was short of breath, and getting sicker, and my hourglass was going down. So my wife finally said, that's enough. She called Northshire Rescue Squad. They were there in minutes, and I didn't know, again, I didn't know how sick I was. I got in the ambulance. They knew I needed oxygen. They were obviously taking my vitals and aware of my situation enough. So when I got to Bennington Hospital, there were alarms going off at the emergency center, the emergency doctor there, because they all gathered around. It was a stormy, windy, rainy night, and they didn't know if I remember them talking about whether they could fly or not. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't get any air. I didn't think it was my heart. I'd been sent home from Bennington. Maybe I had pneumonia, they said. I'd done it for 3 days. And the Northshire Rescue Squad seemed to know what was going on. The rest of the emergency doctor, somehow they figured it out, they were going to fly. They flew, the last thing I remember, that was a Wednesday, the 4th. I was on life support the next day. Surgery, a pacemaker, was 24/7, bovine valve, 50 hour pass. I'm fine. But I was so sick. And when Northshire Rescue Squad got me to Bennington, that emergency doctor had enough information to say, the only way we're going to save this guy is get him another doctor to get him out of here. If they'd taken me in, I would not have made it. This the doctor, the capital cardiologist doctor, told me after a follow-up appointment, said, I remember I saw you. He was off for the weekend. And he came back and said, I saw you walking around. I couldn't believe it. And it just was amazing how everything came together. I just got to say, you guys, I got a lot of gratitude.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Well, we hear a lot of that as well. board members, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard those stories as well. Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from either Zoom world?
Yeah, we've got 3 waiting.
All right, go ahead. No?
Hi, this is Peter. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, hi, Peter.
Great. So I've owned a home up in Dorset for about 20 years now. Have been a regular subscriber to the Northshire Rescue Squad. And I'm very happy and pleased that they have been providing such excellent service to all of the communities that they serve. I was not able to attend the live Zoom call of the Manchester Select Board. I believe that was on January 11th, but I did listen to the entirety of the presentation by the consultant at that time. And I would certainly encourage everybody to take a good look at that presentation. The presentation this evening has a very politically polite response to that presentation. I thought that presentation had so many flaws in it that it was hard to even describe. I think their cost structure that they think that they can pull this off for is absurdly low. I think there's no way that they can do this by July 2022, as they suggest could possibly be done. My understanding is that they recommend the option 2+, and that involves the coordination of a public-private relationship, which is not disclosed. And my understanding is that there are no such operations and no such relationships presently within the state of Vermont. The experience that others have had in the state of New Hampshire has been beyond disappointing. The private company will come in oftentimes and promise whatever you want to hear. And then when the costs don't work out for them, because they are not nonprofits, they are in there to make money, they start cutting back on services. And that's one reason why there are no similar types of operations in the state of Vermont, at least not at this time. And I think that there needs to be some real disclosure. I think there are some significant potential conflicts here. And if the select board can't respond to that, maybe the consultant who is there can address it tonight and tell us what the potential conflicts are. Are there any, who is the medical directors that they intend to coordinate with? Are there any relationships between the proposed private entity that's going to partner with the town of Manchester with either the consulting firm or anyone in Manchester? These are types of questions that need to be answered. So I think a serious review of the consultant report, and if you just look at who the consultant even interviewed, they didn't even bother to talk to anyone at the state EMS or even the district EMS level, as far as I can tell from their presentation. So I think it's a pretty weak report. I think that it's an ill-conceived proposal that's going to cost the residents of Manchester a ton of money, expose them to a lot of liability, increase their taxes, and significantly hurt the rest of the communities that participate in the Northshire Rescue Squad. Thank you.
Thank you for a few comments. Anybody in the audience now, we switch back and take turns. Yes, can you come up, sir? I'm sorry. Yes, right up to the mic. Thank you for your patience, everybody at Zoom World. Hello.
I'm Steve Nichols, I'm taxpayer, retired select board. I've written down many things. And I have to say to the squad board, the complete select board, the town manager, and guests, thank you to the wonderful trained and professional squad. You have saved my life 3 times in the past 3 years. And you are just wonderful. not just me, my mom, my dad, relatives, grandmother, and friends. I'm just so thankful. These folks work morning, noon, nights, holidays, storms, 24-hour shifts, and overnights. The only data provided to squad by consultants had to be requested, and that their quality and service was 100%. What in God's name are we doing messing with? And the town should be embarrassed in the approach that they took. Yeah, there. I'm sorry I'm sounding this harsh, but damn it, what the hell are you doing? I don't know. You have no plan. Your $500,000 budget that you threw in our faces, that takes up the rescue squad. Budgetary rescue squads. I've always been very supportive of our infrastructure, which I've always considered the rescue squad to be part of this great community. The infrastructure. You are nonprofit, but you are part of it. And damn it, look at it that way. And due respect for all, they are the professionals. Rather than government interference, fanatically and insanely to create more control, whether it be putting out a fire, saving a valued life in a car wreck, crime, safety, and road maintenance. It's all important to us. If the town thinks that they would have a better organizational culture, it has been proven by this such approach. We're all adults here, and this is just unfathomable of the approach. Particularly during the pandemic, what in the God's name are you thinking? I don't understand. I sat in front of the TV, I got a call, got a Facebook message from a citizen in Manchester. And 10 other calls that night. What is going on? It's very difficult for me to come up here and criticize. As you all well know, I enjoy thanking people, hugging and showing deep appreciation, and saying good job. Have we lost that in Manchester? Seems to me, by the looks. As this is extremely noticeable, it should be an urgency on the town's part to be realistic in the intentions and transparent to the taxpayers. How come we didn't know? And don't tell me it was in the minutes of the select board meeting. It was not, because I called the town clerk and she could not find those minutes because minutes were not properly taken. For the squad, the board to meet and communicate constructively and positively. Twice a year, I think that group that was organized would be a great tool, obviously. I think we all need to work toward the solutions, sharpen the saw, prioritize, and first things first, and move forward. All communication to and from the consultants retained by the town to analyze the Northshire Rescue Squad have not been shared per bylaw of the state of Vermont. And would assume if any complaints, they would be available and considered a tool for improvement. The concerned taxpayer comment as to what benefit would the consultant have in the future. But is it financial? I went on their website. You all do the same thing. www.mrigov.com. They had probably 20 people that worked for them. And 6 were supposedly trained in EMS, fire, and fire safety. Out of those 6, there was 1 that I would even consider to come here and look and evaluate the rescue school. This gentleman's background was rescue training, etc. And one of his jobs was in Goshen, New Hampshire, a town with 15,000 people or so. And they had a budget of $2.5 million. Is that Manchester? I don't know. I really would question this consultant's ability to make things work. I don't see it. I haven't figured out the benefit, and there was a media report that I read. We've all been trying to figure this out. The benefit for the Manchester Medical Center, mentioned in a media outlet. Town officer and conflict of interest? But that's that question. Or is it financial for them? What's the benefit? I think that, moving forward, I think there is a solution. And I think it should be in the communication pattern, and it should be not an issue of who's going to be in control, who wants control, are they capable of controlling? That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Do we have any Zoom questions? Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Victoria Silsby, and I have a clarifying question for in hopes that the rescue squad could answer my question. So I've read and I heard tonight in the presentation that each town has a number of representatives on the rescue squad. I don't know what to call it, board. So Manchester has 4, Danby has 1, Dorset has 2, and the other towns each have 1 representative. Can the rescue squad tell me if that governing board has met, what the attendance rate is for each of the representatives?
They're actually votes. So there are 4 votes for Manchester, 2 votes for Dorset, and 1 each for the other 3 towns, from 1 representative of each town. So, and we obviously, I'd like to maybe emphasize a little bit more that due to COVID, when we were supposed to have our next meeting, this is 2020, we were in the throes of that, and everything was good. There weren't any problems, and everybody had a lot more other pressing problems to deal with than to meet. Zoom meetings were just starting to get figured out, so that's not an excuse, but really hasn't been emphasized yet. But to your question, that's the Emergency Services Board, and that came out of recommendations from the same consultants in their 2015 review. So that was a very good thing that came out of that. And as Jen highlighted, it became the first time for all the towns to see what each other was paying. And everybody then handed in more of their information, population, and all of the fair shares. And it was really neat to me. I was more new to the board to see all these towns come together. I think we met at the Manchester, a room in the Manchester Town Hall. And it was all these little ahas. And all the representatives met, the agreement was signed, tweaked, everybody had input. was working really, really well. And to our understanding, it was still working very, very well. So there's our 4 individuals, there are 4 votes. And of course, Manchester with the highest call volume has the highest amount of votes and other factors. That make sense?
I don't think I'm not sure that my question was answered. So I understand that in 2015, it was a recommendation that each town had a certain number of votes.
No. One of the recommendations, we as a board talked about what are some of the things we can do.
Okay,
So
but has every time that there's, okay, let me try and ask my question a different way. Every time that there's been a vote, either before COVID or during COVID, has every representative voted? What's their voting record?
Now, to kind of give, honestly, we put this in place in 2017. It was actually July 2017, the agreement was signed, and all the towns came together beforehand to sort of negotiate the agreement and come together. I think we may have had 1 or 2 meetings after that, way back in 2018, maybe early 19 or something, where we had.
Okay, so right there in 2018 and 2019, did every representative come to those meetings?
Yeah, I think everybody showed up. We had representation from each of the towns. I think we may have been missing one, Winhall, because they couldn't make it, but I think, basically everybody back then was willing to work together, and I think that, it started off well.
Okay, I'm just asking for whether or not everyone showed up.
Yeah, back then they did. What's happened since is.
But it sounds like during COVID, there's been no meetings, so there's been no votes.
Well, it's actually been probably even a little before COVID. We would, honestly, the squad had an obligation to communicate several times a year to the reps, and we did so. And, each time I was the main one doing the communications, and each time I would say, let's have a meeting, or can we get together? And then in more recent times, it was, can we get together or have a Zoom? And it's just, this isn't a dig on any town or the reps. It's just people kept on, saying, no, we're fine.
And we don't vote every year in it. The first vote was for the first 3-year contract. The second vote was for the contract we're in the middle of now. All the other towns were fine with that, but we have one town that hadn't signed it yet.
It's also each year, one of our communications to all the towns was we would make a proposal of how much municipal support from all the towns should be raised in the following year. And honestly, we'd say, okay, let's have a meeting and get together, and nobody really wanted to do that. So I went out to each of the towns and said, okay, well, we proposed an amount. Does that sound good? And they'd say, oh yeah, sure, that's okay. Mm-hmm. And so it was honestly, I can't fault the town of Manchester more than anybody else for not participating. It's just, I think everybody else didn't participate, and that was because they were pleased. And so it's a little disappointing to hear that,
I fully hear what's I was just trying to get at whether or not there was some kind of record keeping in terms of representative participation in whatever meetings are being called. That's great. You answered my question. Thank you.
When we had meetings, we had an agenda and we had minutes that were shared with all the representatives. And it's just, honestly, that, we have a failure of communications here, and I think, all of us need to fix it and recognize the communication.
Well, we have great communications with 4 of the 5 towns. And the 5th town is something we've said tonight. We have ideas and we want to work on them. So.
Susan, can I?
Go ahead. Oh, do you want to come up front? Because then people can hear you. Sorry. Thank you.
Victoria, can you see me now? I'm John O'Keefe, I'm the town manager of Manchester. I just like to add a point of clarification to what Victoria was asking in Jim's answer. As the representative, I don't ever remember us actually taking roll call votes. Victoria, can you hear me? There was never any like official record keeping where we actually got into any details that were contentious enough that we actually had votes based on each member. So I think Jim is not going to be able to provide you any documentation to that effect, if that answers your question a little bit.
And that's accurate. We had a mechanism to vote. We basically, each town ended up deciding whether they were comfortable with the financial request, and they generally were. But we didn't have to use the voting. We have minutes from those meetings, but it was basically saying what was discussed, and there was never a vote because there wasn't anything to vote on, essentially.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
I'm going to keep it very quick, short. I want to thank you all for an excellent presentation. You answered a lot of questions. There are a lot more questions that could go on all night. I hope we can have a publicly warned session in Manchester to include our town officials so we can also ask questions of them. But one thing that struck me in reading all of the material that was on the town website on the consultant's report was the word community. And I was born and raised in Manchester. I was gone for many years. I'm back here for 20 years now. And I consider all the participating towns part of our community. And I think we need to keep that in mind.
Another Zoom question? Okay, go ahead. Ma'am? I think we have someone on Zoom first.
Whoops, I'm here. Hi. My name is Mary Beth Hand. I'm a resident of Manchester for many years. I worked up at the Otis Clinic at Stratton Mountain for many years. And the Otis Clinic owned and still operates the Stratton Mountain Rescue Ambulance. My comments are as a resident here of Manchester and also a working gal up top on the mountain. I have worked alongside of our Stratton Mountain Rescue crew, so I know a little bit about how dedicated people are. And all I can say is from a personal perspective, Manchester Rescue has taken care of my husband and family members many times over the years. I have worked side by side with Manchester Rescue at the Coleman races for many years. So it's a personal thing and a side by side thing. And also when they would come and help us up top and our rig might be out and we'd call Manchester Rescue. So they served the town of Stratton many, many times. And I realize this is maybe too emotional, but you can't get any better than this crew. As I said, I know them from 3 different angles, from being a patient's wife to side by side. So I guess I would just say thank you, Mike. Thank you, Linda O'Leary. Thank you, Inga. Thank you, all of you, to be here when we need you. I am a subscriber, and I would encourage everybody to let's just stop and think, and it really all boils down to communication, and that's the bottom line. And if we have to get a little bit better on communication, then so be it. And I'll end up and close out sometimes my too emotional statements, but when we did some fundraising for our Stratton Mountain Rescue, we had the back of our card, which would also pertain right here for all of us to think about, that in Manchester, you guys, you are our rig. our squad, and it's your life. Thank you.
Now we have this lady from the audience.
Yes, I'm Sylvia Jolivet. I'm pretty well known in the community. I've lived for about 60 years, and I'm 86 years old. However, I can't understand. I go to many, many select board meetings. There are very few public meetings that I don't go to. I don't have a lot of knowledge with electronics. In my home, my means of understanding what's going on is the Manchester Journal, the telephone, and the radio. That's where I am in terms of communication opportunities. Now, what I can't understand is why did we need to have a study report of what's going on here between the rescue squad and the town? Why a study report, and why spend that kind of money recklessly when we could use it more wisely? I just don't get it. And personally, I think we're making a mountain out of a molehill. I think the rescue squad is top-notch, excellent, very professional in every way. And I am embarrassed and hurt that anyone would say differently. And I am very anxious that we don't let this thing boil over into a problem that doesn't exist. It's just a matter of people respecting each other and communicating. Communication, talking and listening should solve the problem. You don't need to get into the financial problem.
Thank you very much. Zoom question? Still awkward? No? Okay, go ahead.
Hi. So my name is Judy McGraw. I've had several dealings with Northshire Rescue from a very professional standpoint. They have responded to numerous calls at my house, and even came to my rescue one time in Danby when I was sitting side the road with a child in full seizure and not breathing. And they were there in 8 minutes. So I kind of disagree with response times because, as you all know, it takes a minimum of 15 minutes to drive to Danby. And when you're sitting side the road on the phone with 911, you never know how long it's going to take. And they were there in 8 minutes. Did they come in with lights and siren? Yes. And they turned the lights off and the siren off so as not to make the situation worse. Since we were in a car and I had a child in full seizure. And I really feel that the town has done a serious injustice to Northshire Rescue by making this public before having the opportunity to discuss the findings amongst themselves and with the rescue squad.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anybody else in the audience? Oh, yes, sir. Would you come up front? Sorry to drag everybody up front, but it's the way everybody at home can hear the question. Thank you very much.
Name's Dan Verso. I'm from the town of Danby, retired from the fire department. A member of the fire department for 15 years. I've seen this squad in action many, many times. Be it at my own home for my mom, my wife, my very close friend down the road many times. They're all gone now. Not thanks to them. I've seen them respond to accidents, worse weather, so professionally, each and every time. It's just amazing. Over in Vietnam, when we see the dust off helicopters come in, that dying soldier on the ground will look at that see that helicopter and look at it as being an angel in the sky. Well, that's how we see you people, as angels each and every time you respond. So I would say, the town of Manchester to leave well enough alone. Sign that damn contract. Leave well enough alone. Thank you.
Well, all set with Zoom? Wait, somebody is. Susan, with her hand up, do you see?
Oh, yeah, we got her.
Okay, now those Susans are really loud people.
Okay. Oh. Hi. The question is, now with all this information, positive information that has been given and testimonials, where do we go from here as the public in helping this cause?
Well, that's a very good question. We haven't really talked about our personal next steps. We obviously spent a lot of, I think, valuable good time getting tonight's presentation together and all the folks on the stage involved. We're hoping that the Board of Selectmen, I believe they have a meeting amongst themselves, or when they hold another meeting, that we'll see, what comes out of their own internal discussions. And we're ready to talk again with them. We're ready to continue to take your questions from all of our residents in all 5 towns and hopefully move it forward. I think Bob spoke to the path forward, and you all have copies of that. We'll be posting this online, and we didn't write that just to write something. We mean every darn word of it. So we'd like this to have a good resolution and not have it drag on. That's not healthy for us. It's not healthy for the towns, our elected officials. It's not healthy for our crews to be working with this.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Yes, ma'am, in the audience. Thank you.
1, 2, 3. That's not funny.
You really want us to work.
Cynthia Rosen from Dorset. Everything's really been said. I just want to summarize. Somebody came up and talked about community. My mother-in-law has been helped by the rescue squad. My husband, Ed Marion, has been helped by the rescue squad numerous times. There's a builder here. I have children, my risk daughter, I've got grandchildren here. This is our community. I'm an aging person. I take great comfort knowing that we have a community rescue squad who has come to the call numerous times and who I can rely on. And don't worry, in the event something happens to a child or grandchild in this community. So I know it's just another plug, I'm making the meeting longer, but I just have to say that.
Let's somebody else on Zoom.
Not that we can see.
Okay, everybody looks happy and contented. How about anybody else in the audience? Sorry, I have to do this to see. Okay. And, well, we're not letting you speak about numbers because we'll be here all. We're done, we're not sure. Anybody else from our board? And please, I'd like to thank the rest of the board and our medical director. Everybody's here. We didn't introduce everybody, but we work on this almost on a daily basis. We don't meet once a month. One of us is doing something every day. You don't have an organization like this function financially the way it does without the cooperation of Mike and the staff and this board of trustees. It's a really good group of people. I've learned so much from so many of them. So we'd like to see that stay intact, and we hope you do too. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Thank you to, yes, our Brent Burton and our, thank God for smart young people. Thank you, and for hosting us. And I guess keep tuned. And thanks for coming out on a cold winter's night. We really appreciate it.